I had a video planned that I was going to talk about Benjamin Netanyahu and will he be ushering in the fake Messiah, the Antichrist. But it turns out I just can't do that one right now. So this one's kind of out of the norm. If you're my basic listener and you like those end time scenarios, the uncomfortable truth with AP and Chatty, that just isn't going to be happening today. Instead, I feel like the right thing to do is address the youth of this nation. Now, I'm specifically talking to you, young people, the ones that are leaning left in your ideology, your political stances. I really want to talk to you. And before you change the channel, before you say, I don't want to hear from you because you're a Christ follower, you're a Christian, or because your views lean too much right or the opposite of me, just hear me out. Just hear what I have to say. After you hear what I have to say, you can blast me, you can tell me anything you want. You can uh, disgrace me. You can call me names, every name in the book. I really don't care. But I really just need you to hear me out. At least listen to what I have to say. You give the benefit of the doubt to your professors and your teachers. Just let me speak, listen, and then decide. Decide what you want to do after that. But just hear me out. I want to talk a little bit about myself. So maybe you can understand where I'm coming from as I go further into the conversation. But I myself I describe myself as American Mexican. Okay, I have a lot of other nationalities or ethnic groups, whatever you want to call races in me, but it's such a thing that I don't care too much about. But yes, my grandmother was from Germany on one side, on my dad's side of the family. My father had family from Cuba, and then on my mom's side, Mexican. So growing up, you know, I had a lot of thoughts like yours. And the reason why is because I was taught pretty early that the world was going to be against me because I had brown skin. Now, mind you, this wasn't taught to me by my parents. This was actually taught to me by outside forces, by other minority parents or teachers. You know, a lot of teachers told me this kind of stuff that I'm going to have to deal with racism and uh, certain jobs. I wasn't going to be able to get good jobs, that the system was just aligned against me. And I'm not going to say I believed it totally. I just listened. I listened to what people had to say because I was hearing that at such a young age that honestly, when you're young, you don't think a whole lot about it. But what I can say is we didn't have a lot of money in our family. So to hear these things, to hear people tell me that, hey, you're not going to make it far in this world because it's all worked against you. The whole system's made to go against you. As I started getting older, I did start believing some of these things. The one thing though is my parents never taught me that. They never once taught me that. My dad always taught me about hard work, and they always talked about God. And when I was really young, they made me pray. Now, at the same time, my parents, they weren't the best of parents considering what we consider great parents today, because probably because of our ethnicity, they weren't like American parents. At least like not what we were being told, the way we were supposed to be taught at school. My dad worked hard, and my mom, she, cleaned the house, did all those things. And in their point of view, which a lot of Mexican parents are this way, especially when they're closer to Mexico, is that their love is extended to you by their hard work and, making sure you got clothes on your back and you're fed well. It's not necessarily hugging and having that emotional connection. My dad was very old, so we didn't have a connection where we played ball or anything of that nature. Like he was way too old for that. What he did though is occasionally we would talk, and he would just give me philosophy points. And one of the things I remember is he would tell me that, there was a boy that complained a lot because he had no shoes until he met the boy that had no feet. And I know that may sound a little silly to some of you. I don't know how you'll take that or interpret that. But to me, it meant a lot. And I still remember it today. That's why I'm saying it today, because it stuck with me. It's one of the things he said that really stuck with me. And he was always trying to teach us that. Like, it's not about what you have, it's about how you perceive things and how you go about life, which is a very, very spiritual way of teaching. But he wasn't, like I said, he taught us about God. but he didn't always bring up God either. It was like, he would bring him up. I'm not saying he did. He would say things like, "That's a good book." If he saw you, pick up a Bible, he'd be trying to encourage you to read it. Like, that's a great book. But I couldn't tell you. Like, my dad wasn't. He didn't say verses. He wasn't that way. He would just give a philosophy about being good, working hard, being honest, and those type of things. He never even talked. I didn't know about racism other than outside influences. That's just how it was. And I had a black friend, and he had his family, and like I would hear their way of thinking, because like I said, when you're Mexican and you're poor, you live kind of with everyone. So there was even some white people that were poor, you know, what white people would probably call white trash, but they're just like Mexicans, blacks. All when To me, I started to form this as I was getting a little bit older. It's not so much about race; it's more about economy, about your economic stature. There's poor people and then there's rich people. It was more like that to me in my early philosophy as I was growing. But what I want to tell you is, like I said, I had these teachers want to tell me stuff like that, and before you knew it, I joined gangs, and I got into that in my teens, and it was kind of like my thought was pretty much that government and all that, they didn't care about us, and who cares about them. That's kind of how my mentality was going, while at the same time I did have a spiritual connection to God because of my parents always making me pray. So there was always God was always there. I just didn't listen very often, I should say. And I didn't read my Bible, and I seldomly went to church. So I wasn't getting the full word or any of that stuff, but like I said, I still believed in God. If anything, I feared him more. When I was a little kid, I feared him more than anything. And later I learned through the Bible by reading is that those two things were acceptable. It's either you fear God or you love God. So I feared him when I was young, and that fear kept me out of a lot of trouble. So how am I trying to relate to you? Well, think of it this way. Just like everybody else, there was times where you feel so depressed at where you're at. You want to, like, and I hate to say it, I don't even like mentioning it, but like, you want to off yourself, right? And the reason I never went through with that. It's the same reason I never murdered anybody, or went too far in the criminal activity I was doing, was because of God. I feared God. I feared. My parents told me that you can't take your own life. Like, that's a real huge sin against God, and I was so scared that no matter how sad I felt, I never went through with any of those things. And just like I said, I committed crimes, because I was young and I was in gangs. But I remember being with my friends, and always having this thought, like, I wanted to get out of this shit one day. I just felt like it was going nowhere. The philosophy was going nowhere. I mean, I was in gangs because I loved my friends. There was a connection there, right? You're a bunch of minority children, and you have things in common. And because you had those things in common, you felt a sense of camaraderie. So, like I said, there was this thing in me, though, as I was getting older, that this way of living, I didn't want it anymore, and I actually would try to console my friends. So you could say, even as a gangster, I would tell you I was fairly smart. I was pretty good in school, though I wasn't never trying. I never took books at school. I only took a pencil, and I still managed to get a C average. Get a diploma, and I really didn't try too hard. But there were certain subjects that really I gravitated to, like ancient history. I really liked ancient history, and I really liked the human mind, because, like I said, I had teachers telling me one thing, right, but they're not living my life, and they would talk to me as if they knew my life, and that's kind of when I started to realize that this was all bullshit. What they were saying, I started to, like, despise my teachers, because it's kind of like they try to relate to me when they didn't know what the fuck they were talking about. That's what it really came down to. And I hope you're still listening, because I don't know if you get that aspect, or if you ever did, because there is that little bit too, where especially if you're a white, young man, or a white young lady. I mean, there is these cultural differences. I mean, we're all human. That's why I don't really care about race. I'm only talking about it now because I'm trying to uh get that, make that connection with you. And I know that race is a huge thing. But now that I'm older, I don't really care about it. But we're not going to talk about that. Let's stick to when I was younger. I don't know if that relates to you, but I started to realize all these teachers, all these counselors, and everyone that tried to talk to me about my life really knew shit about it. They didn't know anything, and and that made me not like them anymore. You know, and at this time, I was still like, kind of, if you had to say, well, what were you? You know, I didn't, I wasn't a Republican or a Democrat, but I would say I was leaning left because at this time, my parents, that's the one thing my mom had always told me was Democrats are for the poor, Democrats are for the poor. And you'll actually hear this from a lot of black people. You know, this is a true story. Like they tell you this when you're young. You know, this is who you're with. And I believed it. And I remember, like I said, outside of my affiliation with the gang, I had a lot of other interests. And one of my interests was ancient history. I love the mysteries of the world, right? The pyramids and UFOs. I was very into those kind of things. And conspiracy. I really enjoyed conspiracy, and I remember watching JFK with my brother, and man, I love that movie. To this day, I love that movie. I don't care. People try to say, "Oh, that's not accurate. It's fake." You know, Oliver Stone's just, excuse me, is just this, big time conspiracy theorist. Like, I don't care. It was a good movie, and it really started to open my eyes to the simple fact that, conspiracies are real and they're actually quite there's a lot of conspiracies that happen. I mean, and if you look at history, conspiracy has been done throughout time. So this is my whole breakaway from institutional teaching in the sense where these people are trying to tell me everyone I'm oppressed and all this and that, while at the same time I'm going through this gang life and I'm learning certain rules in the gangs. A lot of things like about respect and basically uh, gangster life, which is, believe it or not, does come in handy as a father because I wouldn't promote it. I wouldn't say, hey, join a gang to learn things, but all experiences in life, they make you more defined, in my opinion, because, it's kind of like if you grow up on a farm, you're going to know a lot of stuff about a farm. Right? And if you grow up in the city and your dad's in the finance industry, you're going to probably grow up going to certain schools and you're going to learn a lot about similar things. So when you're in the gang life or in the, I would say, just the whole poor life scenario, you learn all about that. You learn about people and how we interact with each other. You understand what it is to be weak, like on the primal level. And you think like these things don't matter, but they do matter. They matter. Like, for instance, if you're in the finance world, you know, a lot of times people will say, it's a dog eat dog world. So the people that are aggressive in life and basically have less morality, they usually succeed more because they'll do whatever they need to do to succeed. So when you're in this poor, tribal, it's not the right word, like, but it's just this lower level mentality, right? Like a survival mentality. If you ever get out of the ghetto and you go to school, you will actually be more equipped to go into any of those fields. If you take that mentality with you, you're going to be super hyper aggressive and you'll actually do really well. It's rare that it happens, right? You have the exceptions here and there, but it does happen. That type of life, you see the reality of what people really are. Where when I think you grow up with money, a lot of times you have a fake sense of reality. Like your reality level is only with people that are that way, and that's why when, for instance, back in the 20s, right during the Great Depression, people would jump out their windows and kill themselves when once they knew they lost all their money because they couldn't cope with the fact that they were going to be poor because a lot of these people weren't ever poor. They already grown up with money and trust funds and passed on property and inheritance and stuff. But when you're poor and you've grown up with nothing, you already have this survival mentality where you're just a lot more equipped mentally to handle situations that other people are not. And that's why I said so. That was my getting into the psychology. I really love psychology because, believe it or not, sadly to say, it was the manipulation part. I wanted to manipulate people, especially women, because that was just something that I really was into in my teenage years. I love going out with girls and you would talk to them and I love that they were all different and I love that it was almost a game. It was like, what do I need to say to get what I need from them? and it was sad. Like at the time, obviously I'm thinking it's cool because I'm just trying to get my desires taken care of. So it is what it was, but now I'm older, I'm wiser, and I realize like, man, that all that shit was, I was in the evil set of mind. I wasn't doing anything Christian. Like I wasn't even there yet. You know what I mean? Like I said, I had a belief in God, but I lived it all wrong. And I grew up in a tough neighborhood, and I had teachers that were full of shit that acted like they knew things about me and tried to teach me the things I know they're teaching you. They try to teach you stuff like, you know, our ancestors were so mean. They killed the Indians, and the Spaniards. They just destroyed the Aztecs, and all these things, and you start to learn really quick, like, if you, especially someone like me, that if you like ancient history, you start to realize like it happened all through history. It doesn't take a super genius to realize that, like, people have always been pretty bad to each other. It's so, me, that's the one thing I can say. I always did have a deep thinker's mind, and I think that's why it connects so well with the Bible and today. And I love, the two books I really love in the Bible are Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, because of the philosophy and understanding of God's wisdom. But back then, I didn't quite have that. I just wanted the knowledge and the manipulation part of it. But like I said, teachers were trying to teach me all these things, that how white people are so bad, and you ain't gonna get anywhere in life. But yet my dad's telling me work hard and stuff like that. But things started to change for me when because you know what, all the leftist type attitudes, not all of them are bad. I mean, they were, to me, I felt at this time, like, this is like, early 90s, that a lot of them really did have a good heart, and they were trying to help us, and their belief of helping us was almost making us like we were disabled, right? Like they pretty much treat us like we're retarded or something like that. And so, in today, I would tell you, I know a lot of these people actually, they had more, they got a lot out of this too. It wasn't just about helping us, it was about them fulfilling themselves with, I'm a good person. You know what I mean? It was this fake shit. And the reason why you know that is because whenever you went against them, you could see how quickly people would turn on you. These same people that try to act like they were so caring about your situation, they would turn on you really quick. And you were almost like trash to them. And that's why, that right there, that type of mentality lets you know that it wasn't as much for you as they sounded. It was more to fulfill their own egos, like, I'm a good person. But I did take this one class where it taught me how to get a job, and it talked about how to dress. It talked about having good manners. It talked about looking people in the eye, shaking hands, asking questions about the company you're trying to get a job with, all these things. And that class was fantastic. That's one of the things that changed my life, other than all the other things that I'll eventually get into. Um, that, with my psychology, I realized that was a part of psychology, because I remember the first line in this general psychology book that I started out with, and it said that everybody was a psychologist, because anyone that sat in a park or did anything and looked at people and just kind of watched them, you're a psychologist, because you're wondering why and how and all these things of why people do what they do. And so my interest in that, and then that class right there, I would say if I went to a job interview, it was like a 90% chance I was going to get the job, and that was also learning that you could maneuver in this world if you adopted those etiquettes. And at the time, you would hear people, this is what you would hear from older, say, black people, more or less black people than Mexicans, I would hear it from, but they would basically say stuff like this: "Man, you acting white, man. Why you acting white?" You know what I mean? And they just associate it that way, that having good manners and etiquette, um, as being white. And I thought it was so stupid. Even then, I thought it was dumb. And then this time, I was in gangs. I was still in gangs, but I would play the part to get a job because, hey, man, I wanted to have a nice ride. I wanted to pick up girls. So, I had to play the part. If I had to play the part, then I'm going to do that. But it didn't take me long to realize, like, so what you're saying here is being educated is being white, and that is stupid. And since that is stupid, you don't want to be educated. That's how it really came across to me. It was just stupid. But like I said, before I even go a little bit further than that, I want to go back to something I was saying. is that I know that your teachers still teach you this stuff. They teach you how the world is so unfair and this and this and that. I know they do because that's how they taught me. But like I said, I'm hoping that you're listening to me still. And all I'm asking you to do is think a little deeper, man. Like the world has always been this way. And the goal of Christianity is probably something you haven't really heard of because you've been kept from it. Because it sucks that I feel like a lot of your parents failed you and these institutions failed you, especially to you young white men. You know, like our minorities got issues too. The black people got their issues. They know what they're doing. They hold themselves down, their music and all that. And I pray for them. You know, a lot of them make it out, and they're great people. Anybody that makes it out is a great person. That's why I said I hate talking about race, but I don't mind talking about truth because I don't. If you hear me, I'm not talking with a hateful tone. I don't. You know, I wish more black people would get out of the hoods. You know, but the only ones that do are the ones that realize, like, you know what, in the modern world and even in the world of past in America, if you want to maneuver around society, you do have to have politeness about you. You have to talk correctly. And people can say, "What do you mean, act white?" It's like, no, it's about comfort. That is actually the American culture that no one ever stamped, and we should have. Because when you look back in history, that's why I tell people where the founders messed up is they didn't call this a Christian nation. Now, if you know anything about Christianity, it isn't like what they try to tell you in the movies. It isn't the left's point of view of Christianity, which is no, we don't want it because it's going to be like Sharia law, Muslim. No, 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 no. Christianity has obviously there's a lot of sects of Christianity, right? A lot of denominations, but what the Bible clearly states is everyone has a choice to make, and that cannot be taken from you. So put it this way: I don't believe in abortion. I'm against abortion because you shouldn't want to kill a life to have your life be more important. It's a selfish act. But what I can tell you is, if people vote in abortion, they should be allowed to vote it in. And I know a lot of Christians are going to hear me and they're going to go, "What? What are you saying?" It's kind of like, well, it goes back to that principle that it's a choice. You cannot force people to do, anything. I can't force somebody to be a Christian. God doesn't even force anybody to be a Christian. It's not forced upon anyone. It's a choice. It has to be a choice because a choice means true love, right? A choice means true evil. It's a choice. Everyone has a responsibility to pay. So, though I'm against abortion, if my state votes it in or whatever, then hey, the people that have spoken, if they want to do it, I mean, that's between them and God. Ultimately, that's just the way it is. So, when I say that America should be a Christian nation, or should have said that from the beginning, the founders, it would basically at least plant that this is a Christian nation, so we wouldn't have some of the issues we have today when you have these other people like these Muslims and stuff. They come over here and they use our laws against us, and they try to indoctrinate people into a Muslim culture that does have a Sharia law that is way more strict, and they would not allow a Christian or anyone else with opposing views to go into their lands. So that's all I have to say about that part. But going back to you, like I said, it's just something to think about. Like, the history of man in itself has always been pretty savage. It's not much changed. Conspiracies have been done from then to now. So, when your professors and your teachers try to tell you that there's so much injustice in America, sure, there's injustice all over the world. But what I'm trying to get you to understand is everybody knows that America is the best country. That's why everybody wants to come here. You don't see people leaving to go live even in good developed countries like the UK. But for sure, nobody wants to go move to these undeveloped countries. So that just goes to show you America is the best, though we have flaws. And the thing is that, like I said, these things have been around forever. And I think people look at it the wrong way. Like, for instance, the Indians. One of the things you always hear, like this modern revisionism, is kind of like, well, you know how fucked up the Americans were to the settlers at the time, the pilgrims or whoever you want to say, how fucked up they were to the Indians, the early Americans were. And what they don't realize, it's like, everyone, like, it's like you're painting the picture that the Indians were great people. Just so you know, the Indians still have issues today in their own land. They're people. People have issues because it's a people problem, no matter what. But if you want to talk about like the conquistadors and Montezuma and how they got conquered, and I remember taking a Latin studies class, and they were like how sad it was that they got conquered, and he had three chances to actually kill the conquistadors, that being Montezuma and his army, and it didn't happen. But what they didn't really understand is, or at least the professor didn't teach, was yeah, but none of us would be here, if it didn't happen. So you would actually want your own self to die for these cultures to still exist. And then the other thing you're not looking at is what were these cultures doing? How much better were they? Let's say they won. Let's say the Aztecs won. They beat out the conquistadors. Indians beat out the early American settlers. How much better were they? Do you ever ask yourself that? I mean, come on, the Aztecs and them, I mean, they did human sacrifice, killing people. What, you act like rape didn't happen? You don't think the Indians raped people? Raped their own people, other tribes? I'm just saying, think deep. And this is the stuff the professors do. They try to feed you this shit and get your mind to go one way, and they try to just grab, they corner your mind and they steal it from you. And they don't allow you to think. Because if you were allowed to critically think, I challenge you. I challenge you to go and debate your professor when they say something. Ask questions, not in a mean way, a rude way. Ask questions and see how they act with you. See how they get with you. They get upset. They don't like you questioning their stuff because they don't even have the answers. And when you question them in a intelligent way and you bring up these things, they don't even want to answer because they know that you got them. The jig is up. It's nonsense. You are here where you're at because you're supposed to be here. This mindset of I'm gonna go hurt people, like the fascism thing, right, with Charlie Kirk. This is the whole point of this conversation because I'm hoping to reach a few of you to make you think. Like when I was young, like I said, I used to be you, and you know, I'm Mexican American, American Mexican, how you want to put it. Brown skin, young guy in the 90s, early 80s, kid. Racism, man. Did I ever experience racism? Yeah, I did. But I can tell you it was never enough to hinder my path. It never was. It just isn't prevalent enough. It didn't do anything. The minor incidents I had with cops and stuff, I was smart enough to look at the whole picture. They looked at a young, bald, right? Because I would trim my hair like all Mexican gangsters. Baggy clothes. They looked at me and probably had fear because they already had incidents. They've been dealing with shit for a long time and they know that things can turn really quick into a violent situation. So of course they were going to be rough with me. Of course they probably didn't like me when they saw me. And did some of them have some type of racist a racist gene in their body because they saw me and didn't like me because of my skin color? Sure. But was it really going to hinder me if I wasn't doing those things? Because let me tell you how quickly things changed when I got out of the gang and I stopped dressing that way. How quickly I was never pulled over anymore and I was never bothered anymore. Did I ever experience racism after I got out of gangs and I started changing up my life? Yes. But once again, it was never enough to stop me from getting to where I was trying to go. And that's to do with my dad telling me about working hard because that's what it really comes down to. And I think that's where the left really fucks you guys over. Like I said, especially I'm talking to you young white men right now because you guys are the ones that are committing a lot of these crimes. Black people, sure, if you're hearing me, I know you can relate to me. I know some of you can. Some of you are not going to like what I have to say because I'm talking the truth. And maybe you still want that handout. Maybe you're like, no, man, I like smoking my weed and not getting any further in life and just blaming everybody else for my issues. And I'm sure there's some Mexican people saying, how dare you, man? It's just the way it is. There's always going to be people that want the free shit, that want the free handout. They don't want to work hard. It's easier to blame people. I have people in my own family that's how they live their life. They live their life blaming others for everything that goes on in their life. And it's such an unhappy way to live. And that's the point of the Bible. That's the point of what my dad was trying to tell me. That was the point of, what God has taught me throughout my life. That thinking deep and realizing that the whole world is a big fucking liar. And that's what it is. And the Bible is the only way to really have a flashlight in your hand is that Bible. And you're able to look at the world and see it differently and see it for what it is. It just wants to fuck you over. Excuse my language, but that's what it is. And so you young people, like I said, don't let them capture your mind that way. You're out there. They have you go out there and protest all their dirty deeds. While what are they doing? They get to teach you in class making a fat paycheck. They got a nice house. but they want you to go out there and ruin your fucking life. Think about that. If anything, you should be fucking disgusted at what they're trying to do to you. They don't want you to grow in your mind. In prison, I had a lot of friends that went to prison. I had a lot of friends that died during my tenure in gang life. And some of the things in prison, because you learn that from your friends that go get locked up. Everyone tells you what's going on because you never know when you're going to get locked up. You just never know. So you want to kind of have a heads up with what happens in prison. In prison, there's a thing where if you're one of these people out here and you're getting tattoos like all over your face and shit, especially in the gang life, when you go to prison, you're gonna be treated as a soldier. You get really no respect. You think that gets you respect? It doesn't. And not in the gang life. It doesn't. Because when you do that, it's an over boastful way of thinking. That's how the gang leaders see it in prison. They look at that and say, "Oh, you got that shit on your face, huh? You got 13 on your face. You got 14 on your face. Okay. Oh, you're so hard, huh? You're so hard. All right. Hey, you know what, man? We got a problem with that guy over there in cell block 8. I need you to go over there and fucking send him a message. And then they're gonna have you go and what? Stick that guy in his ribs. And guess who's gonna get time for that? More time added on. It's the soldier. And that's what these professors are doing to you. They're making you guys soldiers because they look at you guys seeing that you're not questioning, you're not asking questions. So they tell you all their bullshit, you believe it, and you go out there and protest, blame everybody else, blame the Republicans, blame big business, blame the tech world, blame all this shit. And what are you doing? You're going nowhere. You're absolutely going nowhere in life. You're becoming bitter at such a young age. People normally don't get bitter till they're old. That's because your body hurts and all kinds of other shit that old people have to deal with. But you're 21 years old, 19 years old, 22, and you're acting like that. You're bitching about the whole fucking world, and you're not living your life. You're stuck on your computers if you're not arguing, and you're not meeting girls. You're not trying to further your life, try to make some money, try to have a career, enjoy yourself because this life is short. People want to say, "Oh, Christianity, you don't enjoy yourself. You can't enjoy yourself." Yes, you can. The Bible says in Ecclesiastes, it says, "Whatever you work hard, you can enjoy your money. You can enjoy the fruits of your labor." You know what I mean? What the Bible just tries to teach you is what I'm trying to tell you is that this world is bullshit and don't get too captured in it. Because if you get too captured in it, everything will pass you by and you'll start to live a bad life or a sinful life because you don't think so, but you're hurting others. That dumb shit. I know some of you ain't gonna like that. Okay, but that guy Tyler Robinson, he goes and shoots Charlie Kirk. His life's ruined. I said it on a short. He'll probably end his life, but if he doesn't, how do you think it's gonna go for him in prison? What type of life is that, man? He could have his view if he wants his view, but he didn't have to do that. But that's how far he was pushed, and now he ruined his life. All I'm saying is this: that injustice will always be in this world, but don't put all your life into that. That's what they want you to do, so you could throw your life away. But don't, man. Like I said, because shit's been going on for a long time. I'm not saying don't fight for justice. Go ahead, but live your life. Live your life. Focus. If you really want to do good in this world, what's the point? Why are you going to go and protest about families being taken from the ICE and all that? Why are you going to do that all day? Why are you going to fight for saying that they don't give enough money to certain individuals or the poor when you can actually get off your ass, go to work, make some money, and help these families? Help a family here and there. You could do a lot more doing stuff like that than just standing with a fucking picket sign. Okay? That's all I'm trying to say is that if you care about these things, then affect others' lives by doing those things, not just standing with a darn picket sign. It's getting you nowhere. It's getting you nowhere. Get an education, get in the government if that's what you want to do. All I'm trying to tell you is that injustice will always be a thing, but they're capturing your mind. They're not allowing you to think for yourself, and they're making you feel shitty about yourself. You end up committing suicide, murdering somebody like that Tyler Robinson did. You're going nowhere, man. You're going nowhere. And like I said, I was going that route. I'm one of the guys who were trying to protect these minorities. And I'm telling you, it's all fucking nonsense. World don't care about it. It cares about what can you do for me. If that's what you want to talk about, the world has always been about competition. They try to act like it's not about competition. It is about competition. If you can make a company money, they will hire you. It doesn't matter if you're a woman. It doesn't matter if you're a man. It doesn't matter anything. It matters what you could do for them. Now, we know that's the game. Is it fair? I'm not going to say it's fair or not. Like, there's plenty of things that are not fair. There's plenty of things that are fair. What I'm saying is bring it home. Stop thinking about what you could do for the world because the world is just too big. Why don't you start small? affect people around you. And that ideology they're telling you, it's nonsense. Like I told you, they're not doing it. They're all working, they're doing stuff, but you're not. You can't even find a date, and they're married. The ones they ain't are even worse. They're even more angry. Look at those liberals that are not married. Some of the most bitter people on the planet. Why is it you look on the right and you see people happy? Everyone's dealing with the same, if you want to say oppression, you are. Everyone's dealing with it. But you know what? I can tell you from personal experience, working hard, I get a gratification because I'm working hard to earn my paycheck and I get to take care of my family. Some people with a lot of money, they'll look at me and say, "You're a sucker, slave to the man." It's like, you know what? If these people are treating me unfairly, they're going to answer to God anyways. As God says, vengeance is His. I'm just going to live my life. I'm going to have children. I'm going to raise my kids. I'm going to spend great moments, happy moments with my children. I'm going to teach them about God. With my wife, I'm going to have a good time with my wife, enjoy what I can of this world that I can afford. And the things I can't afford, just like the Ten Commandments says, I don't covet. Because the Bible's telling you the playbook of life. If you covet shit all day long, you're going to be upset. You're always going to be sour where you're at in life. That's why you don't covet. That's why God's trying to teach you that. Don't covet. You don't need that. You don't need what the other guy has. Ask yourself, are you happy with your life where you're at? If the answer is yes, then you're fine. If the answer is no, then you need to find out why you're not happy. And then you got to keep thinking deeper because like you guys, the people I'm talking to here are probably not happy. That's who I'm hoping to affect here. And you ask yourself, why ain't you happy? Because people told you can't be happy? Because people told you you're oppressed or that your culture oppresses others? Nobody's oppressed in this country. You can say things are unfair to a degree. 100%, I agree with you. But nobody's oppressed. If I make an invention right now and people want it, I could become an instant millionaire. You're not oppressed. These basketball players, football players, black players making millions, singing songs, making millions, touring, making millions. How do you call that oppression? What's sad to me is that people have lost the gratefulness attitude. And that's what I have. I'm grateful for my parents. I'm grateful that they struggled. They didn't know how to raise me in the sense of, you know, teach me the American way too well, but they did what they could and they took care of me. And I have enough sense, common sense, and they gave me that belief in God to gain my wisdom, to stoke my wisdom so I can be smarter and gain more knowledge. And I'm grateful for what they did. And now I'm here where I'm at. And I hope that my kids do better than me and have the same gratefulness. What I don't understand is how you have like the black people saying, you know, all this shit about reparations and how slavery was this and that and how it's like, where's the gratefulness? Like your great grandparents or great grandparents, they suffered a lot, but you're in the best country in the world. You ask any of those people, do you want to go back to Africa? If it could be, would you want to be back there or not exist at all? And they're not gonna say that yes to that. And if they do, they're full of shit. They were being sold and killed over there because it wasn't any different. The Indians would ransack other tribes. That's how it was in Africa. They were being sold by their own people. It wasn't, like I said, there's no utopia. Nobody came from a utopia. So what I'm saying is, if I was a black man in America, I'd be like, it's a shame what happened in the past, but it had to be because Christianity had to be spread in a savage world. And though savage things happened along the way, the Christian message prevailed over evil, and people will say, well, yeah, but that a lot of evil was done through Christianity. That's people. No matter what Christianity never taught to do things a certain way. It never taught evilness. People do evil things. It's just that God found a way to get through because no matter what, if it you can't be Jesus and helping out the Canaanites without having God's miracles and God's power because those were savage people. They're not going to listen. That's what I'm saying. Think deeper. People are not going to listen. You could be a very, very good person, but if you go into a savage land, ain't no one going to listen to you. You're going to get an arrow in your fucking throat. That's what you're going to get. So my point to you is, like I said, if I was a black person, I would be very grateful for my parents and that, sucks that they had to go through a lot of shit, but I would make the most of it. That's the point. That's how you show it was all worthwhile. I did something with my life and now my kids are going to do something with their lives. Like, it's sad, but that's just how things are. A lot of times evil starts something out, but if someone could break the cycle, they can turn all that evil shit into something good in the future. And that's what we're doing. As a society, you always want to move forward, right? Well, that should be the message. So I tell you, young people, I know you to learn about Christianity, to read your Bible, to go to church is so foreign to a lot of you because you've been taught that Christianity isn't true, that the Bible isn't true. You've been fed this bullshit that you're related to a platypus. Come on, man. Like, just fucking use logic, man. Just use logic. It's not true. It's not true. The world was created from nothing. Come on, man. How much faith is needed for that? I have a whole video on that. It's just not true. They just tricked you and they captured your mind, but you can get out of it. You got to just start questioning more, and look at the reality of what the world is. The Bible says that man has a way of always wanting to do evil. It said in the book of Genesis, and I'm not saying it word for word, but basically, we're inclined to do evil. That's the way our hearts are. But also, Jesus said that Christ, God, the Word of God, is written on our hearts. So I would tell you, watch a Christian movie, read the Bible, go to church. If your heart doesn't bleed when you see Jesus go through what he goes through, with the Romans and how he was crucified, if that doesn't touch you, then I guess, hey, whatever. But I will put money on it that if you watch it and you see how he was, you see how they treated him, and I think something will move in your heart because you're going to know that it's true. What you're watching is a dramatization of an actual event. And I think you'll really feel it. And I think things will start to change in your life. That's what I feel. I really hope that you listened all the way through this. I'm sorry to my other followers who are hoping to hear me make a podcast about, end times and what's going on in the world. I'll get to that next week. But right now, I just want to tell the youth, and just break from that. Think deep. Don't allow yourself to be captured. Don't throw your life away. There's a lot to life. You don't have to have a lot of money and all that shit. The world is a liar. You don't need all that shit to be happy. You really don't. And that's what the Bible teaches you. And I think if little by little maybe you start to incorporate some of this stuff, this philosophy into your life, before you know it, you'll realize all that shit that they taught you was lies, and life is much more than trying to be a millionaire or trying to be a YouTube star or trying to do this and that. You don't need all that shit. You find a good woman. If you're a woman, you find a good man. You try to have children. You try to make it by, and you'll go through struggles. And so what? It'll harden you, make you guys better and stronger. You'll go through struggles together. You'll love each other more. You'll have great children. You'll teach your children the right way from the very get go. You will not let anyone else capture them. Ideology. Can't even say that word right now. Ideologically, whatever. There you go. There's the Mexican American accent plus. A little thirsty, but yeah, you're gonna raise great kids, and you'll see that life. It's the little things in life that make it well worth it. We're not here long enough for you to be doing dumb shit, man, and killing people and letting people tell you it's fascist. They're fascist, so we're gonna kill them so they can't speak. Like that isn't fascism. Really think about that. Pray for you guys. Hope you guys pray for me. God bless. Welcome to the Informator.net.